Hey, welcome back. It is Thursday, and we are joined by one of our favorites, Matt Taylor from the voice of the Colts. Matt, how are you, brother?
What's going on? It is freezing up here. How are you guys?
Man, you're not lying. It became wintertime all of a sudden.
All of a sudden.
Overnight.
Indeed. It's going to be like a high of 19 up here today, and I think even colder tomorrow.
I feel you guys. It's only like 60 degrees down here in Florida, so I understand completely what you guys are talking about.
Shut up. Smart Alec, man. Smart Alec. Well, maybe the Colts will get to go to the playoffs to someplace down south. But they've got some business to take care of first. A tough loss last week against the Raiders. Carson Wentz spent the week not practicing because of COVID, and they end up losing by a field goal, 23-20, but still very much alive and making things happen as they take on the Jaguars this week.
Absolutely. It was a disappointing outcome the other day, right, with a chance to clinch a playoff spot and probably in all reality clinch the top wild card seed, if you will, be that fifth seed inside the AFC had they won that game. But it's very fortunate for the Colts in that it doesn't doom them, right? It's not fatal. They get a chance coming up this Sunday against Jacksonville to clinch their spot in the playoffs. But here's the thing, and I know Jacksonville is 2-14. I get that. They've lost 8 straight games. I understand all of that, but this is a place where the Colts have not won weirdly since 2014. They've got some sort of mojo, some sort of weird hex, some sort of northern Florida juju over the Colts, right? I mean, you're talking about 5 straight losses for the Colts in that stadium. So it's still an NFL team with NFL players, and that, they're going to go out and play with pride and professionalism. And I still think it's going to be a really good game and a good test for the Colts. And it's certainly not a layup where they can just show up and, kind of cash their check, if you will, and make the playoffs.
Jets and Tampa Bay is all you got to say, man. Or was it New England they had down? I get them confused now.
Here's the thing. Like, if you look at their wins, they have the strongest. I know people are going to roll their eyes at this, but they actually have, of their 2 wins, they have the best strength of schedule wins in the NFL this season. I know it's only 2, but they beat Buffalo and they beat Miami, and those are 2 pretty good teams. So it's not as if it can't happen.
And who did they have the other day on the ropes? Was it Tampa Bay, Tom Brady and Tampa Bay, or New England? I can't remember.
No, they've been shellacked here lately. So you have to go back really in the middle point of the season where they've been truly competitive.
This is a new stretch for you, Matt. The 17th game. I mean, I think there's an added level of entertainment, added level of excitement for the NFL, and it seemed to be permeating through the broadcasts the past couple of weeks. I mean, what are your thoughts on this new venture, this first time for 17 games in the NFL?
Yeah, it does. I know it's only 1 week, and at the beginning of the season, we were going to say, all right, we're going to play 17 games instead of 16 and have 18 weeks instead of 17. And you're thinking, all right, it's not really a big deal. It's only 1 game. But for the players, I know it's a really big deal. And for me, it's all of a sudden kind of caught up with me. Whereas this time last year, you're getting ready for a playoff game, right? The Colts were getting ready to play the Buffalo Bills. And it just, from a mentality standpoint and from a headspace perspective, it's just much different this year. I know it's only 1 week, but everything's just off a week. And when you're talking about professional athletes and guys, especially football players that are so routine driven, having that extra week, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is, right? I mean, especially with this team having, that late bye where they didn't get a week off until mid-December. And so they really had to navigate it. And it's tough. It's been a tough season filled with a lot of injuries and drama, especially the last couple of weeks with COVID. The good news is the Colts no longer have any players on the COVID list after their big scare and flare up the last couple of weeks. So that's good. But guys have really been conscious of taking care of their bodies this year, and they're going to have to do that now going forward because it's not going to go backwards. If anything, they're just going to keep adding more and more games and playoff teams probably to the mix. So it's weird that week 18 or this week is another regular season week as compared to last year where it was full bore playoff mode and super wild card weekend and all that. So it's definitely added another layer to it. And I think for the fans, it's great because it's another week of football, and it does add more drama to the clinching scenarios and winning you're in and things like that. More fan bases are involved in the drama of the NFL, which is why it's the best thing going. But I know for the players, they would love to have seen the regular season end last week.
Well, and this goes kind of with the NBA. They implemented that play-in kind of style, and a lot of us rolled our eyes with that, and also the addition of another game to the NFL schedule. But when it was all said and done, it added a new element. It added a new layer to get, as you mentioned, more fan bases involved for longer and deeper into the season. So I don't think it's necessarily I know it's going to take some adjusting, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for the sport. But one thing I did want to talk to you about, Matt, is get your perspective. I mean, you've seen him play every game this season. You've seen him the last 2 years. Jonathan Taylor, in your mind, MVP caliber ready? I know he was the leading vote getter among the fans in the Pro Bowl voting. He's been sensational for this team from start to finish. I mean, just this is the kind of year that Jonathan Taylor's had, and do you think he's MVP worthy?
I definitely think he's MVP worthy. There's no question that he should be in the mix. He should be part of that conversation. Unfortunately, I just don't think he has much of a chance to win it because it's a quarterback-driven award. Yeah, it's with what Aaron Rodgers has done this season, putting up the numbers statistically that he has, and Tom Brady in that mix as well. I just think it's in modern day, and I think we have shifted what that term means as far as the MVP is concerned in the last 10 years because it's been since 2012 that a non-quarterback has won that award, and I just think that the voters know that, hey, if you don't have a quarterback and if you don't have a guy playing, at a very high elite level at that position, it's going to be tough for any team to go where they want to go and win the Super Bowl. So I understand that, but no, I mean, where would this team be? Where would the Colts be without Jonathan Taylor? And, he's going to be the rushing champ. First time a Colts player has been the rushing champ in the NFL since Edgerrin James. He's going to lead the NFL in rushing yards and scrimmage yards.
He's got a new Colts rushing record, didn't he?
A new Colts rushing record. He's going to break, if he scores on Sunday in Jacksonville, he's going to break Lenny Moore's record for touchdowns by a Colt in a single season. And really,
I was thinking Lenny Lyles. Go ahead.
Yeah, Lenny Moore, the legendary, Hall of Famer with the Baltimore Colts. And, stylistically and, what their offense has become, it's become, Jonathan Taylor. He's been, the epicenter of their offense. And it's really kind of gradually morphed into that as the season has progressed. I mean, in his first 18 games, in his first 8 games this season, I crunched the numbers the other day. First 8 games for Taylor, he was averaging about 81 yards rushing on 15 carries, and he had 6 touchdowns, right? And the Colts were 3-5. In the last 8 games, he's averaging 136 rushing yards. He has 12 touchdowns in that span, and the Colts are 6-2. So it's really become evident that the offense surrounds Jonathan Taylor. But what needs to happen, though, and I know this is going off on a little bit of a tangent, but if you're going to run the ball 25 times per game with Jonathan Taylor and only throw the ball 20 to 25 times per game with Carson Wentz, I think that's an okay formula, and I think it's the appropriate formula for, given how good Jonathan Taylor is. But what you can't do is throw for 148 yards and still expect to win the game. It's just going to be tough because teams are selling out. They're loading the box. They're putting 8 guys in the box, and they're not trying to hide it. They're selling out, and they're being obvious that Jonathan Taylor is not going to beat us this day, and you're going to have to throw the ball on the outside to win, and that's just not happening consistently enough. I mean, if you look at the last 7 games for the Colts, they've been under 200 yards passing 5 times, and they're averaging only 168 passing yards per game in that span, which is 30th in the NFL. So, again, if you're only going to throw the ball 25 times per game, it's not how many times you throw it, it's how productive you can be while throwing
efficiency,
the ball,
baby.
Right?
Efficiency, baby.
Instead of completing 15, 16 passes, you need to be at 21, 22 passes completed per game for around 230 yards with a couple of touchdowns in order for this formula to work.
And to me, that's where I guess this frustration, and I'll go get off my soapbox here, but I feel like Jonathan Taylor is doing it, and this is why I would consider him more strongly for the MVP than I think a lot of voters would. Is it seems to me he's doing this in an era when I don't want to say we've completely forgotten about the running backs, but the running back game or the running game is not as prevalent. I mean, as you mentioned, you have to have an elite quarterback, you have to have great wide receivers and a good passing game to be able to win a Super Bowl, but for the Colts to be this successful on the ground, basically, because of him, and to win as many games as they have this season, like I just feel
they've gone through.
He's done it in a time when nobody's expecting it to be done, and so for that reason, I thought he should get more consideration. But I totally understand your point, and this is kind of morphed into a quarterback award.
Yeah, and it's truly impressive. I mean,
it's the Heisman.
Taylor's over 100 yards, I think, in 8 of his last 9 games. And in that time, the Colts are just running the ball into crowded box after loaded box, and he's still getting 100 yards. And they're still moving the football. They're still getting first downs, and they're scoring 30 points per game on the regular. So it is remarkable as far as that goes. I mean, Jonathan Taylor routinely, Dustin, will turn what should be either a no gain or a 1 yard pickup or a 2 yard gain into a 5 yard gain, or he's going to rip it off and, break through the second level and break it outside and use that unprecedented speed for how compact and powerful he is. And get a 30-yard gain. We saw that against the Cardinals on Christmas night. If you watch that game, just over 100 yards for the game, but it was that 40-yard gain really at the beginning of the game that kind of set the tone and allowed the Colts to get the advantage in that game, scoring a touchdown in the first drive of the night. So, no, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, you can't go away from him, because even if you don't have the advantage, Taylor is so good to be able to still, control things at the line of scrimmage and put you into favorable down and distances. That's why you can't just completely go away from the running game, even though you're going to be running the ball into some crowded boxes, and when it's obvious more advantageous for you to throw the ball, but still Jonathan Taylor can still do what you want him to do at the line of scrimmage because he's that good.
He certainly is, and having that great of a year. The Colts need to win this week, obviously, and I know, like we talked about earlier, they're playing the Jaguars, and while everyone thinks that that's an easy win, it's not. They are any team that you play. Like I said, the Jets played against Tampa Bay last week and gave them all that they wanted. You said the key words. It's professional football with professional players. They're not winless, and you have to come to play because they're going to come to play. They're playing for a paycheck. And so the Colts have a lot to play for here. If they can get this win, how are they set up for the playoffs?
Well, right now it's pretty much a crapshoot, and that's why Week 18 is going to be so much fun, because if the Colts win, they're in the playoffs, but there's a couple of other games that will determine their seeding, right? The Colts could finish. They're going to be a wild card team. We know that. They can't win the division. Tennessee's already locked up the division for the second straight year, so they're going to be a wild card team, which means they're going to go on the road in the first week of the playoffs, regardless of who they play. But they could finish as the 5 seed, the 6 seed, or the 7 seed, depending on what happens in a couple of other games. The games that impact the Colts are the Bills-Jets game, the Patriots-Dolphins game, and the Chargers and the Raiders game. And it's going to be excruciating for Colts fans because that Raiders-Chargers game is Sunday Night Football. So they're not going to know who they're going to play or where they're going to go until about midnight on Sunday.